Recruiting rankings versus results on the field. Let's go to the best conference in college football next on the Voice of College Football. Hey again, everyone. Great to see you. Let's break down recruiting rankings versus results on the field. It's a much heated debate among college football fan bases in regards to what the recruiting rankings actually mean. So we will look at that, and also we will look at the results on the field. What teams in the SEC during the college football playoff era have overachieved and which one have underdeveloped their talent? Let's first look at the recruiting rankings, and of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide has been dominant beyond belief. 9 number one recruiting classes in 11 seasons. So we're going the college football playoff era 2014 to 2020 in regards to the results, but to measure the players, we went all the way back to the 2011 recruiting classes because those are the players that were on the field for the 2014 season and beyond. So Alabama, again, 9 number one classes, a 1.3 average class, just incredibly insane talent. All right, Georgia's at number 2 with 2 number one classes, and then you see the 5 ranking, meaning that Georgia's average class has been the 5th best in the country. LSU at number 3 in the SEC with the 6th rated class in the country, their average, and you see on down the line. Auburn would be one team in particular that would stand out here as a top 10 rated class, and we see that Florida has averaged a top 10 rated class in college football. Texas A&M with some recent recruiting prowess under Jimbo Fisher has risen all the way to number 6 in the SEC. Tennessee, be looking out for the Vols when we go to the records because they have brought in an average of a top 15 class in the nation. Down at the bottom, Missouri playing pretty well most seasons, but barely averaging a top 40 class in the nation. And we see basically the SEC has placed 11 teams on a regular basis in the top 25 of the nation in recruiting, with Mississippi State and Arkansas right there at 27 average. All right, let's look at the overall records in the SEC. So these are on the field win-loss records since 2014. Alabama's been the gold standard in college football, of course, at 91-8. Georgia, 72-20, LSU at 64-24. What stands out more to me than anything is, consider this, Alabama, just by playing in the college football playoff over and over and over and over and over and over, even with LSU going to postseason play every year and playing in a college football playoff, winning a national championship, LSU has played 11 less games in the last 7 years than Alabama. That's how dominant Alabama has been in the postseason. Florida, Texas A&M with identical records nearly, and then you see on down the line Auburn at 56-34, and then it goes sub 500 starting with South Carolina. There you see Missouri, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky nearly have identical records. In much different ways have they come to that conclusion during these 7 seasons. All right. What is more relevant are the records in the SEC because, of course, some of these schools schedule much more difficult out-of-conference schedules than others, but within the SEC, the schedules are more similar. We see Alabama with only 4 SEC losses going back to 2014. Georgia's been really good, of course. Florida right there as well under Dan Mullen, despite some up and down seasons before that. LSU right there with Florida as well. Texas A&M 32-25 with one of its better seasons, of course, after just going 8-1 in the SEC this past season. Auburn a disappointing 32-26, 6th best record in the SEC. Mississippi State and Missouri have identical records since 2014. And on down the list with Kentucky and Ole Miss also finishing with the same 24-34 mark. Arkansas has been abysmal. Only Vandy has been worse. Let's look at bowl play. Alabama with postseason play, of course, every year, and then multiple games in the postseason most of the time because of the playoffs. 9-3. Not surprisingly, Georgia, LSU at 6-2 and 5-2. Pretty much everything that you would imagine in bowl play has been what you would expect. Texas A&M and Mississippi State both have 4 bowl wins. Interestingly enough, despite Tennessee's struggles and not meeting expectations on a regular basis, the Vols, once they get into postseason play, have been winning bowl games with 4 wins over the Big Ten. They've beaten Northwestern, Nebraska. They have also beaten Iowa and Indiana in those 4 bowl wins. The big disappointment here has been Auburn. The Tigers have routinely lost bowl games. Just a win over Memphis back in 2016. And they also had a bowl win over Purdue, but otherwise Auburn bringing up the rear in terms of winning percentage at 2-5, not counting Vandy's mark there at 0-2. All right, what teams have placed in the final rankings? Well, of course, Alabama in the top 10 has been in the top 10 every one of these 7 playoff seasons. Georgia with 5 top 10 finishes, and then you see Florida at 2 top 10 finishes the last 2 years under Dan Mullen, actually in 2018 and 19. Then you see Texas A&M, LSU, Auburn, and Ole Miss with 1 each. And, of course, LSU made the most of their top 10 finish, winning a national championship in 2019. Top 25 finishes speak more to the middle tier of the SEC. Of course, the top teams almost always finish in the top 10. So there you see some other schools jumping in. Alabama always in the top 25. Georgia, interestingly enough, missed the top 25 twice. And so all 5 times that Georgia has placed in the top 25, they made it all the way up to the top 10. There you see Florida routinely in the top 25, making it 5 of 7 seasons. Then you see LSU with 4 and Auburn with 4 appearances in the final top 25. Tennessee, Mississippi State, Ole Miss with 2 finishes in the final AP poll, along with Texas A&M. SEC championships, Bama's dominated with 5 during the playoff era. Georgia's got 1, LSU 1 in winning the national championship in 2019. Division championships, Alabama again up top. Georgia and Florida pretty much split the SEC Eastern Division, LSU, Auburn, and Missouri. In the college football playoff, of course, other than Alabama, LSU winning the title in 19, Georgia getting to the national championship game in 17. Alabama has been dominant there with an 8-3 college football playoff record. In New Year's 6 bowl games, this is excluding the playoffs. Georgia and Florida with a couple wins in the New Year's 6, and LSU and Texas A&M as well. Auburn has been in the New Year's 6 twice and lost to Oklahoma and UCF in the Sugar Bowl and in the Peach Bowl. How does all this shake out? Well, it pretty much tells us that the recruiting rankings don't lie. Alabama, followed by Georgia, LSU, and then Florida have recruited the best players, and they have come up with the best results. Alabama clearly at number 1. Georgia a clear number 2, although LSU, of course, won a national championship in there within 10 games overall of Georgia. And then you see that middle tier. If anybody's underachieved at the higher levels, it's been the Auburn Tigers. They have averaged the top 10 recruiting class, and they're only 6 games over 500 in the SEC. They've only placed in the top 10 in the nation, despite averaging a top 10 recruiting class, only 1 top 10 finish for Auburn in 10 seasons. And in that particular season of 2017, Auburn lost 4 games. You would also say that Tennessee is underachieved. Clearly, the Vols are a putrid 22-36, 14 games under 500 in the SEC. And they've averaged a top 15 recruiting class. And then LSU, to a certain extent, take out the championship season, 15-0 in 2019, and LSU has finished in the top 10 just one other time, despite averaging a top 6 class in the nation, and they've had 9 top 5 classes. 9 top 5 classes out of 11 years nationally. So LSU is underachieved as well. Overachievement. I think we got to go to Missouri first and foremost. They've got the 13th or second worst recruiting effort in the SEC since joining the league, and they've pulled off the 7th best record in the SEC during that time. So the 7th best record despite the 2nd to worst recruiting class. Mississippi State right there. The Mississippi State Bulldogs are 15 games over 500 at 52-37, even though they have had the 11th rated recruiting class in the SEC. You got to say Arkansas is a disappointment as well, because even though the recruiting class is not great by SEC standards, still every one of Arkansas's recruiting classes, excluding 2, have been in the top 30 in the nation, and they are a dismal 14-44 in the SEC. And also overachieving to a certain extent would be Mark Stoops' Kentucky team that is playing good football the last several seasons at 47-40, 7 games over 500, despite being 12th in the SEC, averaging a 34th rated recruiting class. Hopefully that makes sense to all of you. It clearly defines that the recruiting rankings don't lie. Over time, in mass volume, yes. Are there misses? Of course. There are the outliers. Texas, Wisconsin. Yes, there are outliers. But basically, they tell the story. But those are the overachievers and the underachievers in the SEC. We're looking at you, Tennessee. We're looking at you, Auburn. We will continue to do these kind of analytics right here at the Voice of College Football. Leave your comments below. Please join us for our live shows, which include Oklahoma, Nebraska, Ohio State, Florida State, and Miami, right here at the Voice of College Football.